Because of you, across the board, we're cutting down on acid rain and air pollution. We're making our drinking water cleaner and safer. We're creating healthier communities. But that's not all. Safeguarding our environment is also about strengthening our economy. I do not buy the notion that we have to make a choice between having clean air and clean water and growing this economy in a robust way.
Industrialists and the congressmen that I see, and in the last 2 years I've seen all resistance evaporate. There is no one in the Congress today that will say, I am against the environment, or I don't think we ought to take strong action to preserve and restore the environment.
President Trump signing an executive order aimed at revoking the Clean Water Rule. There you go. Fox News alert now. The Obama-era law expanding federal protection to streams and waterways across the country.
EPA's so-called Waters of the United States rule is one of the worst examples of federal regulation, and it has truly run amok.
Strongly believe that access to clean water should not just be a privilege. Water isn't just the universal solvent. Water is a universal human right.
Scott Pruitt, head of the EPA installed by Donald Trump himself to completely dismantle the 2015 Clean Water Rule put in place by the Obama administration. And it said that any navigable waterway, federal waterway, is now under protection of the Clean Water Act. You can't just go and recklessly pollute this specific body of water as long as it's navigable.
That Scott Pruitt's on the record saying he's not going to show a distinct preference for industry. But they also might be alarmed to hear him say he's not showing a distinct preference for the environment. Well, what's the name of the agency?
Right.
His argument is environmentalists create regulations, they create confusion, they create litigation. Industry, when allowed to do what it wants to with some gentle prodding from federal regulators, creates new solutions and better outcomes.
It's a process used for nearly 60 years, unlocking massive amounts of natural gas trapped in shale deposits right here in the U.S. It's called hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, and it's a safe and efficient path to energy independence. And it's also the topic of ACTIA's latest publication. Take a look.
It would have to rise up a mile or a mile and a half to touch the aquifer. It's not only unlikely, but there hasn't been a single documented case of pollution of groundwater directly from fracking. You need to balance this against potential risks of spills and contamination. There has been no contamination. It's not that it's impossible. It hasn't happened yet.
Thousands of complaints about drinking water have been discovered coming from communities near fracking activity.
The state knew about it and did nothing. They were willing to wait a year to see whether the water was safe. All the while, highly corrosive river water flowed through the city's lead pipes, leaching lead and other dangerous metals into the water supply. And what came out of the tap in many homes was toxic.
Now this is coming out of a sink right there, and it's at a hospital. This is the water coming out of a sink at a hospital. And then this is just somebody at a protest holding up a jug of the water.
Acidic, and it's causing, our infrastructure is very old, and it's causing all the iron and the lead and the manganese and the copper and everything in these pipes to leach out, because it's a cheaper way than doing what they should be doing. And it's affecting many municipalities across the United States.
18 cities in Pennsylvania have lead levels even higher than those recorded in Flint, Michigan, where a state of emergency has been declared by President Obama due to water contamination.
It's unpredictable, but the methane randomly travels with the water, and sometimes it will light quite spectacularly. Just like that. their post-fracking test, their own, the methane tested 0.01 milligrams per liter. And since July of 2010, it has tested as high as 64 milligrams.
There's no way that this is legal. This is disgusting. Take a look at this water. Now tell me does that ain't gross. The rocks are all stained from the iron. It just ain't good.
People are less important than fish or little insects or reptiles. The bottom line is, ordinary people, ordinary Americans should be our highest priority.
There's some reports of Legionnaire's disease, which could be tied to the dirty water as well. This is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And that regulation will cost $20 billion. And what they're not mentioning is, oftentimes, especially with environmental regulation and anti-pollution regulations, you save a tremendous amount of money on healthcare costs, because then people don't have lung issues anymore, and emphysema and heart disease and all the things associated with high levels of pollution.
We reduced the amount of pollution, we held corporations accountable, and we said you are not going to pollute this water that eventually is going to end up in the bodies of men, women, children, the elderly, animals, everyone.
I mean, our focus here should be on stewardship.
By that, he means rolling back regulations to develop all forms of energy, including coal and natural gas.
Our country is blessed with incredible natural resources, including abundant offshore oil and natural gas reserves.
So your mission is vital. And just think of what this agency has been able to do over the last 4 decades. There's so many things we now take for granted. When I hear folks grumbling about environmental policy, you almost want to do a Back to the Future kind of reminder of folks of what happens when we didn't have strong EPA. The year before President Nixon created the EPA, the Cuyahoga River was so dirty from industrial pollution and oil slicks that it literally caught on fire. In my hometown, the Chicago River, you probably could not find anything alive in there 4 decades ago. Now it's thriving.
Union Oil was drilling off the coast of Santa Barbara when crude oil began leaking at an uncontrollable pressure. 100,000 barrels of crude oil leaked from Pismo Beach to the Mexican border. It decimated Southern California's marine wildlife and led to a public outcry.
Still in U.S. history, the tanker Exxon Valdez, gouged by a reef, more than 8.5 million gallons poured into Prince William Sound, a prime fishing and recreation area.
Oil gasping for air, and those pictures came back. We said, yeah, we're going to get some help.
The most costly regulation in U.S. history is in this big pile of regulations here at the end of the year, and it has to do with the ozone layer. The ozone layer is now back in the forefront. Remember, we were hearing about the ozone layer for so many years? Well, the EPA came out in 2007 and said, you know what? Ozone exposure, not a big deal. We can find no evidence that it has adverse effects. Well, the Obama administration has dug through and tried to find people that say that ozone still is bad for you, and they're going to push through this ozone regulation, the costliest in American history. Well,
I haven't heard ozone layer in forever.
I know. Or you want to bring back acid rain? Remember acid rain?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to acid rain? It was ruining cars. Whatever happened with that?
Regulation worked, is what happened with that. Whatever happened to acid rain? I mean, these guys act like we need regulations, but then there was acid rain. That's gone, right? I wonder why. Because of regulation!
117 million people's drinking water is now once again under attack. It's going to be under attack from corporations. It's going to be under attack from toxic chemicals that cause cancer and other illnesses, neurological diseases that are incurable and ruin a person's life. That's okay. That's okay, according to this EPA. I'm sure the 117 million people who are about to begin drinking poison would probably disagree with you on that, Mr. Pruitt.
Like they're just in annoyance to their corporate overlords who are plundering their lands and poisoning their water supply and ruining their lives. It's got to stop.
The heart of this, more than water, is money. And the money sits there and it flows with the water.